I thank you, Honourable Presiding Member. Of my 20 minutes, I don't think I'll take all of it. If there is any time remaining, please, if you can give that remaining time to Mr. Honourable Siddharthan, I'll be grateful. Honourable Presiding Member, we are discussing today the ministerial statement made by the Honourable Finance Minister after his discussions with the IMF. Now, in that statement, he went on to list a number of mistakes. In fact, he admitted to a number of mistakes that his government had made that also contributed to the current state of the country's economy. Of course, he naturally tried to make out that this wasn't the sole responsibility on this particular government, but rather from consecutive governments that have been in office, and due to the various wrong populist decisions that each of those governments had pursued, that ultimately brought us to this situation. But one matter, Honourable Presiding Member, that no one can deny, in fact he himself admitted, was the fact that there were tax reductions, tax cuts that were decided upon as soon as the presidential election was over, and that in fact that decision precipitated the present circumstances. I don't think anybody in this House can deny that reason for the current state of affairs. Whilst most certainly this country has been plagued with debt to a point that it is strangling, but for the economy to be scraping the barrel in the way that it is, it has to be from the tax cuts and basically shrinking of the taxpayers' percentage that caused it. That was, without any exaggeration, the reason why Sri Lanka was downgraded, literally resulting in shutting Sri Lanka from the international markets to raise loans, and we are here today. Now, these decisions, Honourable Presiding Member, were taken despite members of the opposition, in fact all members of the opposition, whichever party that sits in opposition, warning that these are decisions that will eventually lead to severe financial consequences that the country and the people as a whole will be asked to put up with, and that given the COVID situation, that it will be crippling. But no one listened. I remember after the presidential election and when these decisions were taken, at that time a parliamentary election was called for but could not be held. It was being postponed due to the COVID situation. Members of the then opposition, we were not in parliament then, but certainly members of the then opposition, including members from the northeast, warned the government repeatedly that these decisions will have dire consequences. But obviously the government and the president in particular, considering the margins of his victory, was intoxicated by his popular swing, that he chose not to listen to anybody. The business community, leading economists, wrote letters to him. I can responsibly say, have written letters to him that were not even replied. So that is the cavalier, arrogant fashion with which the President himself conducted affairs. And his government in Parliament chose to blindly support everything he did. So when that situation is the reality, and today the people, the ordinary people who are facing the brunt of this crisis have realized what a mistake they made, where the country has been bankrupted by the decisions, primarily precipitated by the decisions of the President and this government. And when they are saying that these people can no longer serve in government and that they must go, and when the government chooses not to listen, when the President chooses not to listen, then obviously they have no choice but to express their displeasure in some other democratic way, and that is what they're doing. They're on the streets. In a democracy, when you have given a mandate for, let's say, 5 years, and when you find that your mandate has been completely violated, usurped, you have been defrauded, then the only other way in which you can in some way try and rectify that situation is by calling back. When you don't have a legal provision to in fact call back your mandate, then the only other way is to get on the streets and to make sure that the people that you had given that mandate to in fact leave. And that is what the people are doing. Now when that is happening, we are here in Parliament carrying on a drama. And what is that drama? The reality, Honourable Presiding Member, is that this House is redundant. This House no longer represents the will of the people. And in order to try and pretend that there is some sort of credibility, you have a drama that is being enacted. What is that drama? That is that some of these 2/3 members that belong to the government, until not about 3 or 4 weeks ago, were the strongest allies of the President and this government, blindly supporting, violently supporting. If their words can be put into physical practice, then that is violence. That is the nature with which they back the President and the government. All of a sudden decided that they wanted to sit in opposition. 1 month ago, Honourable Presiding Member, on this very floor, when I spoke soon after these so-called members announced that they were going to be independent, I told members of this House that it is a drama, that this is not going to be the case. The Honourable Jagat Pushpakurwara spoke just before me. He is a member seated in opposition today. But everything he said was to ensure that this government continues. What did he say? What is the logic he said? First thing he said is that there is no point in bringing a no confidence motion against the President. That the only way by which you can force the President to quit is by bringing an impeachment motion. You need a 2/3, that's not practical. Now this is a sitting member, sitting in opposition. And he's saying it's not practical, so therefore don't waste time. You have not brought an impeachment motion. No confidence motion against the government does not have legal value. So that's a lie, it's a hoax, it's just to try and fool the people. Then what's the next issue? Well, if you can bring a no confidence motion that can succeed and that will have legal consequence, it is a no confidence motion against the government. What is he saying for that? Oh, you bring the no confidence motion against the government, but we can't accept it now. The SJB has to tell us what their second plan is. What are they going to do after that? So until they tell us what they are going to do, until the SJB tells us all the details, we are not going to support it. That's very convenient. Why did you cross to the opposition? What are you saying? Read between the lines. This present situation must continue. This present situation must continue without the people having their say. Honourable Presiding Member, 1 month ago I said that this impasse can only be solved by an election. Until you have an election and until the people feel confident in the members of this House, They are not going to leave the streets. They are not going to leave the streets. Today, the opposition, the combined opposition, has a challenge. And what is that challenge? The challenge is that we must be seen to, on the one hand, try to somehow help with the economy with the very same people who bankrupted this country. And when you have 2/3 of them being members of this house, any member or any party that wants to in some way try and rectify this situation has to be in cahoots with almost half of the 2/3. You're not going to have a majority in this house without at least half the members who are culpable for bankrupting this country being a part of your own government or supporting you. How on earth can you govern? You can't, Honorable Presiding Member, without having an election. And that is the priority. For as long as you postpone an election, the political crisis that currently prevails will become far worse. Riots will pursue because this house will be seen as not standing to the will of the people, and a house that is totally discredited. And when riots happen, what is going to happen? We have a president even today who takes great pleasure in appointing army personnel to ministries, to secretaries. What is going to happen when riots take place, when the people have decided to talk, when they go further because their voices are not being listened to? What are you going to do? You're going to unleash the military. That is what is going to happen. That is what this president and this government is gearing for, Honorable Presiding Member, because there cannot be any other reason. If every single member seated opposite wants to maintain their political credibility, the only way that they can do it under the present circumstances is to support the dissolution of Parliament. Give us the support for that 2/3 so that we can go and tell the president to hold that parliamentary election. And I say that you need a parliamentary election because even if the president resigns for whatever reasons tomorrow, this house will be asked to elect a new president. How can this house be asked to elect a new president when this house itself is totally redundant? So it is my party's considered view, Honorable Presiding Member, and we will certainly give our fullest support, and we challenge members opposite. We challenge members like the Honorable Pushpa Kumara who just spoke. If they are credible, let us bring a motion to dissolve Parliament and let us raise that 2/3. Let us raise that 2/3. And if you can do that, you can also impeach. You can also impeach. If you don't do that, all those who do not support that will be held culpable. Will be held culpable, and they will be held accountable. Honorable Presiding Member, today the people, in fact, the leader of the opposition this morning had tweeted that there has to be a system change. There has to be, and what I presume he meant by that is a radical change in the entirety of the system, because the system has failed. Well, the Tamil political parties seated in opposition have always been saying that, not just in this parliament, but every single parliament for the last 70 odd years, that this system that you have is not going to work because it is a system that is rejected by the citizenry, a part of the citizenry of this country. The Tamils have rejected this system. Increasingly, you will find the Muslims rejecting everyone that the state, in the name of security or in the name of Sinhala Buddhism or in the name of what have you, whatever fancies the government of the day, will target as enemies. This system cannot protect. For various reasons, this system has failed. And if that system is to change, what is that change? The Honourable Opposition Leader, Sajith Premadasa, again, a couple of weeks ago, to the great disappointment to our party and to me as well, said that he's going to implement the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. What is the implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution? How are you going to implement it? The 13th Amendment to the Constitution has been in force for the last 34 years. Are you going to do something that you have not done in the last 34 years? You can't implement so-called the 13th Amendment because it is within the unitary state structure. For as long as you remain within the unitary state structure, you cannot devolve power. That is, everyone knows that. The Supreme Court has ruled not once, over 30 times, upholding that principle. So you can't implement the 13th Amendment and be sincere to devolution. You have to change the system. And what is that change? You have to move away from the unitary constitution. Now I'm raising this issue, Honourable Presiding Member, in this debate with regards to the IMF and with regards to this political financial crisis for a reason. You see, for the first time, I have said this a number of times in this House, I see an opportunity for this reason, that the Sinhalese people today don't trust their own leaders. I don't say it as a boasting phenomenon, something that I feel happy about, but it is an important situation. They feel that their own leaders have destroyed their country. Today there is no war. In the last 13 years, when this country could have gone from strength to strength, you have not. You have in fact gone from pitfall to pitfall. And today you are bankrupt. So, for the first time when they are questioning their leaders and they are angry with their leaders for the decisions that they have taken, why I say there is a golden opportunity is this. We are asking the ordinary Sinhalese people to then just think, if their own leaders have brought them to this level, have lied to them and destroyed this country in the way they have in front of their own eyes, just imagine what they have been telling about the Tamils. Just imagine what they have been telling about what the Tamils stand for. When we say we are for a federal state, these Sinhalese leaders, without batting an eyelid, continue to lie even today. Lie and say that federalism is separation. Ask those questions. Ask those questions, because those are the lies that have destroyed you. Today, this country is spending almost 19% on defense. 13% directly goes for military. 13% of your annual budget. And that is supposed to increase by 2% every year. That is the nature of the military that you have created. This is after the war. Military expenses at its highest, even more than during the war. And Honourable Presiding Member, what you spend for healthcare and education is less than 10%. How can you justify that? Is this sustainable? But even today, despite the fact that this country's economy has been destroyed, and that you really have to go begging to people that you considered your enemies in the last, like India, even today, not a word is being spoken about the ridiculous way in which the military is being maintained and defense expenditure is being maintained. Why is that? These are the questions that the ordinary Sinhalese people must ask themselves. If they can be lied to in front of their own eyes in the way that they have been, just imagine the lies that these leaders have told about the Tamils, about what the Tamils are asking for. And if they don't ask that, if they don't ask those questions, and if they don't make the right decisions in that election that we say must happen, then nothing can save this country, Honourable Presiding Member. And as far as I'm concerned, that will be the last chance. That will be the last chance. When my father was assassinated by the Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam government, Honourable Presiding Member, members of my family who had settled abroad,
please wind up.
Members of my family who were settled abroad asked me and my family, my mother and my sister, to come abroad, to declare asylum and to come abroad. But despite the fact that my father was assassinated, something in me, despite all the evidence to say that this system is not going to be changed, something in me said that it is the leaders that are at fault, that the Sinhalese people have not been told the truth, that one day if they actually can have an opportunity to know the truth, that they might change the right, take the right decision. That is that moment that I thought then has come. And if this opportunity, in this moment, if the Sinhalese people don't open their eyes, and if they don't accept the fact that Sri Lanka is not just for the Sinhala Buddhists, that it is for the Tamils, it is for the Muslims, and it is for the upcountry Tamils and the Burghers and whoever.
Please wind up.
If you don't change the system accordingly to recognize that there is the Sinhala-speaking nation and the Tamil-speaking nation in this country, and if you don't change that system to one of a federal nature, then this country will fail. It will fail because you will have to continue your defense expenditure. It will fail because a newer diaspora, a newer Tamil society, a more modern society will find modern ways of trying to undermine the state, because they consider the state as the entity that is against them, that is against their right. All this while we can say that it is the leaders. But today, when the Sinhalese people themselves, in front of their own eyes, have realized that they have been hoodwinked, they have been lied to, they have been defrauded by their own leaders, there is no way that they can now turn around and tell that the Tamils have not been wrong. If they are in fact going to turn around and say that the Tamils have not been wronged, then there is a racist agenda. And I sincerely hope, Honourable Presiding Member, as an individual who was born and bred in Colombo in the south, as an individual who has some of my closest friends as being Sinhalese, Buddhists, and with whom I have a lot of closeness, I sincerely hope that lasts.